Hey there, welcome to the Engerati studio. We're live here at European Utility Week 2016. Today we're discussing distributed energy systems, and I have two of my friends here, Mark and Raphael. And before we jump into this topic, and we're going to take a really unique angle on this topic, I would like Mark and Raphael to explain a little bit why they're the two people you should be listening to today on this topic. So let me know why you're here and what you're going to bring today.
Thank you, Carol. Yeah, so I'm a director in Navigant's European consulting practice, and based in London, which is still definitely part of Europe. And we work a lot with clients going through the energy transition, you know, all the disruptive change. But a lot of them are businesses who are used to a stable, regulated environment, and that's changing. Yeah. And they see market forces changing, they see regulatory change, they see changes from customers. And so there's a lot there that's hard to grasp, and so we've got a lot of interesting opportunities trying to help that transition to happen in a sensible way. Okay,
so Mark is going to help us stay grounded here, and as we talk about this transition, and Raphael, how about you?
So I am the head of research and technologies for ENGIE, which is, as you know, a large utility company in 70 countries, and we are in the middle of an energy transition. You may have seen that we had decided not to invest anymore in coal-fired generation. Next to that, we are investing massively in renewables, a field in which we were already. And I represent here a community of the ENGIE Labs, which is a network of 100,000 colleagues that are actively working on the future of grids and energy patterns. And so I can be the one that brings some elements regarding what about techs and what about the new business models that we are seeing. All kind of topics on which we are doing trials with customers, and so I'm extremely excited about these exchanges and here at the Utility Week Summit.
Yeah, so some of the, I was on another panel with a peer of yours, and so ENGIE is bringing a very interesting angle with what you were just talking about, with looking away from fossil fuels. And bringing quite a serious financial model behind that too, so a financial commitment. So the distributed energy systems has strangely become a buzzword. I would say that 5 years ago.
You now have your core results.
What?
Distributed energy systems, your core results.
Yeah, what are they?
So the results are a resounding yes. People believe distributed energy systems will be the normal in the future.
I believe it. I suppose that's why we're sitting here, but let's thank you, Ade. So it actually raises a great point. We talk a lot about distributed energy systems, distributed energy resources, Internet of Things in relationship to that, changing business models, and I think a lot of us think about things. We think about nodes, we think about assets, we think about a thing that generates, a thing that consumes, this side of the meter, that side of the meter, and we speak in general about the changing customer. So what I really want to focus on today is talking about the relationships within the distributed energy system, not so much the artifacts of the system, except how they promote these new relationships and how they will change the business models within the utility. Where, as somebody said to me quite interestingly, we're in a world where our customer is now our competitor, and who else has to deal with that? So I want to start with that general topic. What does it mean when all of a sudden you're faced with a world where your customer is your competitor? What do you think?
Well, it's certainly a challenge, and even before that, there are many utilities who don't always have that end customer relationship fully either. So there are some who are used to running networks, running assets, and they have a customer relationship when there are outages and faults. So for them, I guess there's opportunities, but it's quite a challenge to say, well, you've got these new customer relationships. There are others who are used to being a supplier, and it's that one-way flow of electrons and information. And in that new transactive world where you have prosumers, if you don't embrace it, then someone else will. So I think what's key is to look at what's possible with technology, and the way of the future is that increasingly you can generate, you can be a prosumer, and the traditional supply model, I think its days are numbered. You know, maybe decades rather than years.
Yeah.
But I think you've got to look at what a supplier will provide in the future. If you can't provide trust, if you can't provide services to customers rather than just electricity, I think there's going to be some real challenge.
Yeah, so I do want to jump into this issue of trust a bit later, but I hear you maybe putting, correct me if I'm wrong, putting faith in the technology enablement of these relationships, which I think there's a lot to be said for automation. So we'll jump into that later, especially around the trust component. But what do you think, Raphael, about the customer-competitor component of distributed energy
I think
systems?
that's the direction in which we are going is not a competitor option. It's much more a partner option. Your customers are, in this energy transition, becoming partners in the way we develop the energy transition on a distributed model basis, which is we see more and more of our customers who want to have their own generation capacities at home. At the same time, I do very much agree that there is a question of trust and there's a question of service. For those who want to deal with it by themselves, you need to provide them with the maximum support. And honestly speaking, it's a business in which utilities have experience. So you need to find a certain number of new approaches based on those who want to deal with it by themselves, quite a bit, a little bit less, or not at all, but still being a major actor in this energy transition. And if you look at the transactive energy system that we see getting developed, you have an array of these different patterns. From those who say, I'm going to do it on my own because I love this, I love technology, I want to put my finger in it, I want to cable my things, I want to see how it works. Sometimes you see really, tech, very enthusiastic people. Whereas some others say, well, I love the idea that I have my own generation capacity, but please, I trust you as ENGIE, please handle it. And on top of that, if you develop an energy community, you need in any case, as it is an energy community, a trusted party. And who can better do it than the party with whom they already have
Well, let me stop you there.
Yeah.
You said, you both referenced this prosumer becoming a partner sort of concept, and you explicitly said it, but so perhaps it's time to get rid of the word prosumer if they're actually partners. I don't know. Let's think about it, because it's relying on this old expression of a relationship between the customer and the utility. And when we talk about trust, here's the hard part. If customers are actually our partners now, a lot of times here in this sort of environment, we say we need the customer to trust us, and we maybe don't spend enough of the discussion on what are the things that are required to enable that trust if they're actually a partner. If we look at our customer now, not in a retail perspective, but as a business partner, I think that changes the level of the conversation. Maybe it's inappropriate, I'm not sure, but it's another kind of lens to look at the problem. And you alluded to this earlier. You called it transactive energy. You talked about the technology that might enable this new business relationship we have with our customers. So let's talk about transactive energy. First of all, I want to define it. I don't know if anybody's willing to do that explicitly, because it can be fuzzy. So, but let's try. Why don't you give it a first shot here?
Sure. Well, what I understand, there's two different elements to transactive energy. There's a sort of a grid-related transactive energy, which is really that me as a consumer, I can choose who supplies me power, and not just a traditional energy supplier. I could choose someone next door who has excess solar power. So in theory, it's a bit like the Uberization of electricity, where with Uber, someone with a car can be a taxi driver, but you need that technology, but also the trust element is key. So there is a transactive energy world which is grid-related, which is very much about providing electricity or providing energy. But then there's another element that can be more bundled service related. So why stop with electricity? Why not say there's other things that could be transacted? And that does open up a much broader sphere. But I see it in those two areas. There is sort of a primary grid-related, electricity-related
so the delivery piece and then the service piece.
Absolutely.
Did I capture that right?
That's a good way of summarising it. But there can be bundled services, not just about electricity. They can provide information. There could be other things that actually build on a basic transactive energy service.
I think that's the right framework. I mean, visually, that's how I see it. And I would wonder if you have some more of a comment on the economic piece.
I would separate physical elements from software element or content and value.
Yeah.
So once you start a transactive energy system, you need to take into account that there are a certain number of physical elements that need to be dealt with. You know, there are electrons flowing, there are physical realities. It is not such an easy thing to make it flow adequately. If you take a village, for instance, you know, having sometimes when I go, and visit France in villages in Europe, you have one home that has decided to put solar panels. Suddenly all the different neighbors say, well, that's great, I love it, I want to do the same. And then suddenly, after a couple of weeks, you have the lowest end of the transmission grid that just is blown up because you have had flows of electrons that were not anticipated and the equipment were not
Hawaii's definitely had issues with
so
that,
what I want to focus on here, then you have the mayor say, what happened? Okay, so there is an element regarding these systems that is the physical elements to be dealt with by people who are who know about that. Then next to that, there is all this software and all this digital capacity to start having people interact. And indeed, you may have your neighbor who wants to sell, neighbor A wants to sell to neighbor C or neighbor B. And if they clients as partners or as a community wants to do so, you need to enable it with technologies. And then I do agree with you, which is it's not all about the electron trade. It is also about service, which is you come and you help people install, manage the equipment that they have, and there is a service for that. And also you can trade something else than just electrons. Let's take for instance the example of green certificates. I have generated X amount of green electricity. My neighbor is interested in greening its electricity. He or she will still receive electrons from the grid, and they might be green or might be gray, but let's say it's gray. And he wants to green it or she wants to green it, and then a neighbor sells the green certificate to the other one. There's no electron flow, but there has been a transaction, which is we collectively, I with my solar panel and my excess of green electrons, I green your own electricity. So there can be certain elements in that community that are not directly related to the flow of electrons.
Well, I think there's a lot. So there's a lot to dig in here. The first thing I want to talk about is when you're discussing these rooftop solar, for example, or community aggregation, where you're trading in a local community, right? Or even utility scale, renewables and management of distributed systems. We're raising this new financing issue. So really it becomes a financing problem in some ways and an ownership problem. And I think Solar City, for example, has actually treated the customer like a partner in a very unique way. And I know this firsthand because they showed up at my door, and of course I trapped them in there for a long time to find out what was happening. They were basically offering me, the same kind, a long-term agreement like any kind of power provider would get, which enables them to set up their own transactive service doing, a bit of a microgrid as a service, but using rooftop solar. So that raises the elephant in the room, that is the utility the best entity to manage these transactive services, and if so, why? And does it have to do with this trusted relationship? And if so, I'd like to know how that's going to be enabled and raised up to another level. Do you have a thought on that? You're good at keeping us grounded.
No, well, I think it's a very good question. Like, who do you trust? Because one of the things with energy is reliability is paramount. There's no sense in going to someone that will save you $1 if the risk is that you'll have blackouts and you won't be in control to that same degree in terms of, energy is fundamental to the way you live. And it's not just about keeping the lights on anymore. Anyone with teenagers will know that if the power goes out, your mobile phones and your internet goes down, and that's terrible.
No gaming.
Yeah, so there are some of those sorts of changes in priorities. It's not just about lighting a candle to replace your power. So I think the question around who you trust is key. Do you trust Solar City that they will manage things in a fair commercial way? do you trust your utility, or is there someone else? Because the rise of Uber in the taxi industry just highlights that the relationship between provider and customer, it's changing, and you can cut away a lot of layers in between. Do you need people in the middle as a traditional utility? And if so, what's the value they provide? And it may come down to some fundamentally different values to what we see today. So I think there's definitely some challenges around the commercial model that you highlight, and it may be that's a key role, that the technology is ahead of the commercial model often. And that might be a thing that utilities need to look at more. How do they help customers in a commercial way, rather than just treat them as a consumer or producer? Because if they don't do that, then others like Solar City will say, great opportunity, let's do that, and then they'll become a longer term customer with a contractual basis.
On a contractual basis, and it's a long, I didn't do it, but I had to make some steep financial decisions to put this solar on my roof, and then trust Solar City to be my roofer, essentially. Were my roof to be a problem, they were insuring fixing it. So I won't go into my personal solar issues, but I would like you to address this disintermediation and hollowing out issue. We've talked about it a lot, but reality's here now.
On the 2 points that you mentioned, first, Carol, the question of providing solar panels to customers or partners or prosumers. Utilities like us come to customers with financing solutions. Mm-hmm. So you refer to one given supplier in the market with his business model, but his business model that you find also in the hands of utility. I want to embody here I'm not talking only ENGIE, I'm talking about the energy community at large. Yes, you have new players coming and providing this kind of offers, which you can also find coming from traditional utilities. Now, touching on the other elements, which is this trust and reliability of the system, I would like to tell you about what is happening in our labs in relation with these new suppliers of solution, because we should not believe that we do not talk to each other. Now, in the ENGIE labs, for historical reasons, we have developed over the past decades the softwares that are being used by most of the TSOs in Europe to modelize what is happening on grids in the 15 minutes to come. This is, very deep data analytics, and it didn't start yesterday or the day before. Because data analytics are a kind of fashionable thing. It started decades ago, okay? And it's being upgraded every year. We invest millions on this. Why? Because not only do we modelize, high voltage transmission lines, but also medium voltage and also low voltage. And the latest simulation that we do is about this energy community and these local grids, and the fact that you have electrons now flowing in all directions. It is not anymore about a central system going from high voltage to medium voltage, low voltage, and electrons going in that direction. It's about the flow going in all directions. And I refer to what I mentioned to you about what's happening in a local village. You need to be able to modelize it and to make it work. And so who comes to our door and who do we engage with? Is players that come up with systems where they will knock at your door and say, I could put a solar panel and a battery and an inverter and a digital system. And by the way, do you know whom I'm working with? I'm working with an ENGIE lab. Why? Because the ENGIE lab works. We don't have only internal clients, which is ENGIE business units or ENGIE business units clients. We work with everybody. We are an open network of labs. People do not know it, but we have external customers. So we work with them to make this solution work. And it's, for us, important to engage with the community at large. We need to accept the fact that in the system, there are our own solution and the solution of partners, be they clients or others, and to make it all work.
That's the point, I think, of this whole conversation. So customers don't want to think about your distributed energy system nodes. There are a lot of excellent reasons for the utility to be your trusted partner in this. And it's true, like somebody might show up at your door and you, as a customer, you might not have all the information about how electrons flow and be able to ask the questions about reliability. A lot of people with solar, at least in the United States, think that when the grid goes down that their house is going to stay up, and it's not because of the inverter technology and the danger of not being able to island, essentially. So the islanding issue. So there is some fundamental misunderstanding about what being a prosumer means to the consumer, but that's not stopping people from acquiring these things. So Ade, at the beginning of this, brought a poll to us, and there was another poll which had to do with reaching consumers, and overwhelmingly the attendees at European Utility Week, at least yesterday when I saw the results, were saying you must find trusted partners, because you need to have trusted partners who can do this kind of messaging to prevent the hollowing out, if that's what you're trying to do. Or maybe you need to be working with these partners. We need to be, I think, and I said this earlier, and go ahead and push back if I'm wrong, but we need to start thinking of these customers also as our business partners as well, and reaching them in new ways. So let's talk a little bit about how I want to know especially how you advise your clients in the energy market to work with partners. How do I find a trusted partner? What am I looking for? What kind of strength do I want to augment? And most especially, how do I maintain value, and in some cases shareholder value, but how do I maintain value in my utility? What is the thing that I need to hold close?
Yeah, well, it's a very challenging topic right now, because with disruption there's opportunity, but if you're an incumbent, maintaining value isn't easy. But I think you're seeing some new partnerships really changing. Certainly, some of our clients are realizing that municipalities and cities are incredibly important in this new world where local presence becomes more important, and so that's one area where you're seeing a lot of new relationships developing. And cities themselves are also saying we have a bigger role to play. So that's one area of partnership that I think is really key. The other thing is the sorts of technical partners is changing a lot. It's not really about, well, you can see it at this event, it's not really about providing high voltage cable. It's much more about IT, OT, different sorts of systems. And so the right sort of technical partners is key. And so utilities are needing to look more broadly at their whole supply chain. Right. And say, who technically do we need to work with? Because these sorts of solutions require different sort of IT skills. It's not about volts and bars, it's more about bits and bytes. And that takes a fundamentally different sort of capability. Yeah,
I hear you describing the utility as a platform, an energy platform, and that's a huge difference than being a project management company, which is a lot of what utilities have done very well for 100 years. So absolutely. It's a big shift.
And it's also about looking at providing services rather than managing assets. And I think that also takes a shift in mindset. As you talk about value, well, it's harder to make the money in the big assets. There's not the longer term contracts, there's not the security, there's a lot more volatility in pricing. And so we talk to our clients around, well, if you have a platform, it might be an integrated DER platform, or maybe there's a platform around electric vehicles. It doesn't have to be a physical platform, but a platform
as Raphael
with services.
Was saying earlier, yeah.
And you need to look at what are those services you can provide to customers, and there is value there. Okay. But it's a fundamentally different mindset, because some of these clients are used to long-term, capital assets, rather than operating expenditure.
It's a mindset shift. I mean, reliability has always been the most important mindset in energy security, and now we also have to think of ourselves totally differently. If I were to call myself a utility, but so we just have a few minutes left. So if you wouldn't mind, I'd love for you to provide us a final word as a follow-up about what are the services. When you opened up your opening comments in this panel, you talked about looking differently at the kind of the hardware thinginess level and the software services application level. So if you could provide a few thoughts there.
Two elements. First, I very much agree with the fact that we should not forget that there is the representative of the community, which is the mayor, the city, let's say the public side there, which is asking us, okay, how I see that my population wants to move in that direction, how do we do it? Because I am actually their representative.
That's right.
But I need a technical partner that can tell me which direction do we go. And so we talk to municipalities. They are our partners. We do business with them. And we also talk to ministries. So we created 2 years ago a batteries lab just to work with the suppliers of PV panels and batteries acknowledging the fact that it is not only, there will be several players, and we are one of them, but we have also this capacity to integrate everybody in a given place because we have this experience of how a grid works. So we have ministries coming to us from different countries. We have municipalities coming to us, or we engage with them, so it's a bilateral relationship. So I very much agree that they are also in the picture. Now, what do we provide? We provide our own solutions, rooftop, PV, inverter, batteries. We engage, we have 2 years ago started a very deep innovation, open innovation approach. And so we invest in companies that are providing such solution in different places. We are in 70 countries, so in one given country, you have a different solution from another one. And we acknowledge that there are several players. And we position ourselves as an integrator and an expert. And next to that, we also are on the service side, which is for those who want us to be there to help them install this system and run them, we are there. So you have this array of connection, and as a summary, we are really talking here about energy communities and partners and prosumers moving together towards this energy transition.
Oh, I totally agree. So this was could have been a technical topic, distributed energy systems, but we are now at the place where we're talking about ecosystems. We're talking about ecosystems of partners. We're talking about an ecosystem that includes our customers as partner generators. So how appropriate that we're talking about it at Engerati about connecting the energy community, because that is more important more than ever. And I want to thank everybody for coming to our studio today, and thank you to Mark and Raphael very much for participating.
Thank you, Carol.
Thanks. Yeah.
Thank you, Carol.